Coming up next on the Wet Fly Swing podcast.
At first, people only want to learn when you give them the opportunity to. So, with these, with these videos, we're not in people's face saying, hey, white supremacy has caused this issue and, it's your fault, blah, blah, blah. No, we're highlighting the people that are changing it, right? So, yeah, it's an opportunity to educate.
That was Madison Lauterbach reminding us how to effectively make change. Another powerful grassroots group with a boatload of passion today on the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, how you doing today? Thank you for stopping by the show. Super quick reminder, if you can, check out another great fly fishing podcast. The Destination Angler podcast right now is out there. They've been producing some great content. Steve has some destination trips around the country you can check out right now. You can just click in that search button, click Destination Angler Podcast, and click subscribe, and you'll get updated when their next episode drops. Trestle designs, engineers, and manufactures industry-leading outdoor products and premium apparel. From their game-changing telescopic fly rod carrier and their specialized waterproof cases and fly boxes, to their magnetic nipper system that is revolutionizing the way people snip their line. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/trestle right now. That's Trestle, TRXSTLE. Check out what John and the crew has going right now at Trestle. Bear Vault has the perfect solution to keep your provisions secure while heading into the backcountry this year. Bear Vault builds a rugged locking canister that keeps bears and other wild animals away from your food. Proper food storage is one key to an epic backcountry trip. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/bearvault right now and check out what they have going. That's wetflyswing.com/bearvault. You support this podcast by checking out our sponsors right now. Madison Lauterbach takes us into the new series of movies she produced, focusing and highlighting women in fly fishing and some of the challenges they face, told with stories from people around the country. We find out who Miss Mayhem is, why safety is such a huge topic for women, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm teeing this one up so you can drive these topics onto the green and out to the world, making change one podcast guest at a time. Without further ado, here is Madison Lauterbach from MissMayhem.com. How's it going, Madison?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for putting this all together. You a while back we connected, and you let me know this movie you have going, which sounds amazing. Everything you're digging into, kind of more on from the women's perspective of fly fishing, which is always a big topic, right? There's a lot of from being a man, and obviously I'm a man. It's hard to get a perspective of what it's like, right, from that end. And I think you guys, this movie is shedding some light on that. So we're going to dig into everything, and I know there's a lot I don't know, so I'm excited to hear about this. But before we get into it, talk about first how you got into fly fishing, then we'll take it to the Casting Forward movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Like most people, I learned, it was passed down to me from the previous generation. My dad has been fly fishing for about 20 years at this point, maybe a little bit under. But he taught me how to fly fish about 8 years ago. He had been trying to teach me for years and years before that. And I was pretty resistant because, teenage girls, and sometimes they don't always want to do what their dads say.
Yeah.
About 8 years ago, I decided, okay, I'm going to finally do this. I was really into snowboarding at the time, and my dad kept kind of, telling me hey, this professional woman snowboarder also fly fishes, you should get into it. And finally I kind of gave in, and yeah, it's been awesome. Him and I do a few float trips every year. And then now my partner, who I've been dating for 4 years, also fly fishes as well. So I get to go with both of the two most important men in my life.
Nice.
And yeah, and then I also love to go with the women in my life as well. So yeah, it's been great.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've talked about this quite a bit on the show, but I have 2 daughters that are, they're going on 8 and 10, and this is great to hear because
Okay.
they're not totally into it. They can cast and everything, but I think since I love it so much, I've planted the seed. I'm sure even if they're not into it now, maybe I have hope right for later. You think that's a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially as we get older, we want to spend more quality time with our parents. So yeah, I think it's definitely on its way to happening.
There you go. Cool. Well, talk about, and we're probably going to dig into more maybe on your background, because that's pretty interesting. I'd love to hear kind of some of your fishing, like where you're at and things like that. But I want to dig into the movie here, the casting forward, what you have going, because that's what we want to focus on today. So maybe just start us out there. Talk about what the movie is. Maybe describe it to somebody who's kind of new, never heard of what it's about, and why you put this, the group, who put it together and what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of backstory. I started Ms. Mayhem, which is a Denver-based online news outlet, in May of 2020. And we predominantly focus on stories about women in male-dominated industries and fields, and other marginalized communities, and people making waves in their communities, basically. So we try and report from the intersection of race, class, gender, ability, sexuality, all those kind of things. So last year, what inspired the project, I bought a pair of, quick dry pants, from a very famous company. I'm not going to name them, but, and they have, a lot of push to get more marginalized people on the water. And I am of average build, and I could not wear them. I couldn't get them up past my knees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I started thinking about the industry as a whole, and, what these companies are actually doing aside from lip service, basically. And I, dug into some women-owned companies and this, that, and the other. And it kind of snowballed into this major multimedia project. So, I started talking to some of the other people on my editorial team, and they were super supportive of doing something like this. Even though we have now discovered that doing a major video project like this, it was way above our heads at the time.
Right.
So casting forward is kind of the end product of what we referred to as the fly fishing project for the last year. And it is a premiere event, and it's going to be a digital journalism package as well. So we're having this premiere event on May 18th, where we will showcase 5 videos that we produced as part of this project. And they are on average about 15 minutes long. There's 5 of them, as I mentioned. And then, like I said, that it'll also be a digital journalism package that we're putting up on our website after the event. Around, I think we decided June 8th is when we're publishing that. So that journalism package will include photos, the videos that we're showing, and also written stories for each of the videos that kind of pairs with it.
Gotcha. So May 18th. So, and right now, this is obviously going to go out right around that time, and it'll be out there for years to come. So when people come, if they're listening now, where would they go just to listen? Is this something where there's a fee to listen to it, or how does that look?
Yeah, so the event is virtual and in person. And then obviously, people can check out the digital journalism package after it's up on the website. But yeah, so for the videos, right now until it's put up on our website, well, I guess even not right now, but after May 18th,
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be virtual.
Gotcha. So good. So we're talking, this is going to essentially, May 18th is going to be the big event. And if people want to check it out, I guess, so what would be the best way? Remind us again, if somebody wants to watch this video, what should they do?
So you should come to our event, whether that's in person or virtually, especially if you kind of want to be the first, among the first to see all of our hard work. But if you can't make it to the event, going to our website, msmayhem.com, after June 8th is a great way to experience the full effect as well. And that's something that I suggest, even if you go to the event, you're only kind of seeing half of the story. Even though we, are doing our best to include everything in video, or in the videos, you can't always get everything into, a 15-minute video. So to get like the full effect of all of our work, definitely check out the written stories that go with each video after June 8th.
Oh, right. Yeah, because there's a ton that won't be in the video. And so,
yeah.
Okay, that's great to know. And so missmayhem.com, that'll be the perfect place. We can go check that out. And what would you say to, obviously we have a lot of, males in the listening now, but also, women as well. We have, I think somebody you might have highlighted was Penny Maybe, who actually we did a cool, one of my first trips when we got going on this, we did like a trip up to a Steelhead trip. And Penny was a listener, right? And came on the trip, and it was amazing. She is like super, this really cool person.
Yeah.
But it's really, our audience, I think, is still heavily dominated by men. So what would you tell the men listening? I mean, is this an event that definitely they want to go to support and how does that, like, what could we do to be more inclusive and understand what's going on here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously these videos were kind of made for women, but, we don't want just women to watch these videos. I mean, if only women watch these videos, it's kind of like preaching to the choir, right? Like, we want these to also educate people that may not be aware of these issues. And that's one thing, I mean, unfortunately, we do kind of have to relate everything and say, well, men out there, you have, daughters, girlfriends, wives, sisters, whoever, the women in your life will most likely at some point experience some of these issues, especially if they are in fly fishing. But even if they are not into the sport, I mean, these are kind of reflective of larger issues in, larger society. And, we're kind of trying to meet people where they are in their comfort zone. So for a lot of, predominantly white men, that is, sports like fly fishing. And we're trying to meet people like white men who may not be aware of these issues to kind of expose them to, okay, now you see that it's an issue in fly fishing. It's also an issue in larger society. So, I mean, especially safety for women on and off the water. I mean, we spoke to some women who had scary experiences on the water, but there's a lot of really bad stuff that happens on Instagram and Facebook, and those Facebook groups that we all belong to that are fly fishing groups that help us connect to other people. They can also be kind of a little bit aggressive, and that's kind of an understatement as well. But I mean, and minority and marginalized people, they're being left out of conversations about conservation, which is obviously a much larger issue than just fly fishing. So yeah, I mean, these are kind of, we're holding up a mirror to society and kind of reflecting it back within a comfort zone for people.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, it hits home with me too, because I've heard, a lot of stories. But yeah, I mean, Megan, who's, the person in my life, is amazing. And but I've heard story, like I never knew about any of this stuff. And I think that's the challenge, is like the white man, whoever, right? You just don't, if you're not in there, if you're just a normal person, you know what I mean? You're not even seeing that stuff. But
right.
Megan has told me, even last night, we were coming back from this trip, and she's like telling this story about how she was hiking up on some trail and some white dude was following her the whole time. And she was really scared, like to the point where she almost puked.
Right.
And then finally she got away and was able to find another group out there hiking. But I mean, that's the stuff, like these really, and I don't even, you know what I mean? It's just, so that's scary. And I think that for me, I would never understand that, because that's never even crossed my mind, unless, right. So that's kind of what you're getting at, right? These are the stories that everybody, you and probably a lot of women who are outdoors are seeing that sort of stuff.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one thing that we kind of nailed down on, especially in our video about women's safety, which is called Fishing in a Man's World, we went through the comments on the Orvis 50/50 on the water campaign video that they launched several years ago. And I don't know if you've ever done that, but
no,
it is a wild ride.
Right.
We took screenshots of some of these comments to use in our video to kind of like iterate the point that like this is, something that I think a lot of men are unaware of, but also kind of willfully ignorant about, like, or they, pretend that it's not a problem. I mean, there were some comments in there, they're typical, like, oh, Orvis is just, like, appealing to feminists and this, that, and the other. But there were some that were actually really kind of terrifying. One commenter referred to Men Go Their Own Way several times. And Men Go Their Own Way is like an anti-feminist, mostly online group of misogynists.
Wow.
Who like advocate for separating themselves from a society that they think has been like poisoned essentially by feminists.
Oh, wow.
And women. Yeah. So yeah.
That's
and
crazy.
they've, like a lot of like incels and, people who are potentially very dangerous have belonged to this group. So yeah, it's not, it's not imaginary barriers. It's not an imaginary problem. Like, this is actually very serious.
With over 40 years of experience, the Anglers Coffee crew roasts a full range of coffees with one major goal in mind. You know what that is? Delivering excellent coffee to every single angler on this planet. Responsibly sourced from farms using sustainable growing practices, you can rest easy knowing you are doing your part. They are roasting and shipping this within 48 hours as well to assure freshness. You can check out the Derek DeYoung Special Artist Series, get a cool bag with a cool design, and support a great group right now. That's Casting for Recovery. $1 of the proceeds are going towards them. With a blend for every taste, a dry dropper on the go bag, and everything else, Joe has it going. Check them out right now. That's Anglers Coffee. wetflyswing.com/anglers to grab a bag of greatness today. So that's obviously a huge topic. And what you do in the movie is essentially, you have like a 15-minute section of the movie that just goes into like safety. And then you also have like a few other sections, right? Describe some of those other sections as well and how it all fits together in this movie.
Yeah, so it's actually, we haven't strung these together into like one cohesive movie. They are actually separate videos. So our first kind of section, or, first video is about 14 minutes long, and its name is River Revolutionaries. And that's one where we kind of take a look at 3 women in the fly fishing industry who are kind of changing it from the inside out. So we spoke to Kim Ranalla from Miss Mayfly Waders, April Archer from Sarabella Rods, Dylan Demery from She's Fly Fishing, which is a fly shop that kind of curates gear specifically for women. And her whole thing is like, if she can't fit in it, she doesn't sell it, which is awesome. I love that. And so we kind of cover in that one, like why and how they started their companies, how other companies that are already established can improve the women's gear that they sell and make, the impracticality of like the whole shrink it and pink it phenomenon. Yep. We just kind of talked to them about, why women, have become used to not being able to find gear. And, it's mostly because we can't find clothes that fit anyway in general.
Right.
It was an awesome video to do. And we actually, so we're Denver based. We actually flew out to Chattanooga, Tennessee, to interview Kim and a few of the people that she has kind of on her team. My assistant producer, Esteban Fernandez, and I went out there for a weekend, and it was awesome. It was hot. I think we went in August. So it was pretty hot and muggy, but it was a really cool experience. And then another video that we have is about 12 minutes long. The name is Intangible. And that one is about how women are affecting, the climate change and conservation movements, and how they're passing education on to the next generation. Because obviously there's always going to be a difference, how women pass things on to the next generation versus how men do. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, that, a lot of people learn how to fly fish from their fathers, or another male example in their life. And, now that a lot more women are getting into it, they're going to be the ones that are passing it on. So for that video, we spoke with Cara Armano from Artemis, Crystal Egley, who's a former Colorado Parks and Wildlife videographer. And she also has since then started Inclusive Guides. And that's an awesome organization. And then Barbara Lunau, who is the Colorado Trout Unlimited Stream Girls program director. So in that video, we looked at how each of these organizations encourages women to be stewards and spokespeople for conservation. We looked at women's connection to wildlife and the outdoors. And then the Stream Girls program, which is this awesome partnership between Trout Unlimited and Girl Scouts.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
I want to go back quickly you mentioned on the gear, because that obviously is a big part of it. These are all huge topics, but on the gear, what would be, there's a lot of, companies that are listening to this show and they have gear out there. What would you tell them from what you've learned that could help them kind of create, products that are more, that align with men and women alike?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I think would be probably the most useful for, all genders, is completely scrapping the size chart.
Oh, right.
I know that, it takes money, it takes time, it takes energy, but completely scrapping the current sizing charts that most of these companies use. I mean, for men too, like, there are curvy men out there that can't fit in waders, right? Like, that happens, and our bodies are all different. So coming up with a sizing chart that fits the majority of bodies instead of 30% of them, which is about the average right now, for most companies, because about 70% of women are in the United States are size 14 and above. And most companies only go up to size 14 if
Oh,
they
wow.
do.
Wow.
So, like I said, you're covering about 30% of women. And then obviously there are, like I said, men who can't fit in waders as well. So,
Yeah.
making something that is more size inclusive, that's not based on runway models, is
Right.
probably something that's pretty helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we always talk about that. Like I said, Megan's always with our kids. It's like the Barbie, the Barbie
Right.
doll. It's like, wow, that is so not realistic, right?
Right.
And they just
Yeah.
push that. And so, yeah, that's a big challenge. So who out there? So we have these great. Sounds like you mentioned a few of them that are, and I've heard about some of these companies, Miss Mayfly and things like that are female owned and operated. What about some of the male or whatever? Some of the bigger companies that aren't necessarily thought of as female founders and things like that. Who out there? Is there a couple companies that are doing a good job with this, or are there any companies doing a good job with this stuff on the gear?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one that I can think of off the top of my head is definitely Adams built.
Oh yeah.
So I bought my partner is one of those men who's a little bit curvy. And I bought him for Christmas a pair of Adams built waders, and boots. And I was floored at how well they fit him.
Wow.
I mean, he's a little bit shorter. He's a little bit stout. He's and they fit him perfectly. So I would definitely say like Adams Built is doing a great job with their sizing for sure.
There you go. Yeah, and I'll give a shout out to them. They're kind of more of a, not the, when you think of the huge, bigger companies, they're kind of more
Right.
medium sized. But you see them, they're doing a good job. And, there's a whole crew there. I'm trying to think of now the founder. I'm not sure if you remember, but I'll put a link in the show notes, but Denis Isbister is kind of a guy who I think he's helps promote what they have going, and Dennis and I are buddies. So shout out to Dennis. I saw him actually at IFTD. So good to finally connect in person. No, this is good. I think this is it's just almost like baby steps, right? Some of this stuff where even this thing you're doing is so huge and people that watch it, I'm sure, are going to be impacted, but it's still just a stepping stone, right, to the next thing.
Yeah.
It's probably going to take us still years, right? Years and years to get to a point where even the 50-50 is the biggest thing because of Orvis. They've got it out there. But I mean, just like this project you're doing is adding to that. And how would people, how do they, it sounds like you had this passion, but again, people wanting to do a project like this, what would you tell them, right? If they're getting it, they're really passionate about doing something similar to this, what would you say?
Yeah. I mean, number one, if you are interested in doing a project like this, make sure that you have a good team behind you. That's one of the only reasons why we kind of survived through this. We have an amazing team. Allie Mae is our lead photographer, and she did some of the videography. As I mentioned, Esteban Fernandez, Polina Saran is our lead editor on the back end. And all three of them have done, odd jobs here and there, and just done an amazing job at supporting this project. But yeah, I mean, making sure that you have a great team, making sure that you have the equipment, making sure that you're talking to people who have good things to say, that are comfortable talking on camera, that, have meaningful things to say, and that, are doing the work behind that meaningful, that behind those meaningful things.
Right.
And we approach this project through a journalistic lens. So we're not trying to, push an agenda or anything like that. We did get, a lot of different input from people, and we put them all in there. It wasn't like we were trying to kind of spin a story.
Yeah.
So even in the video that we did about safety, we spoke to Courtney Despos, who, hasn't had an experience that has been scary while she's been guiding or on the river.
Yeah.
That is important. We need to show that too. So, just making sure that you are helping the industry, but also, if you're going at it from a journalistic standpoint, that, you're showing, we call it both sidesing a story, even though there's a long, complicated history of that. Yeah, I mean, if you are just going out and, you're trying to not necessarily approach it from the same angle, but do something similar, like I said, making sure that you're finding people that are doing meaningful work, not just focusing on people who are like you too. I mean, we tried to diversify the sources that we had in these videos as much as possible. I would love to see a video about people with disabilities on the river. Like, as a person with disabilities who often struggles to, fish a full day or, do whatever most people can, able-bodied people can. I would love to see a video about, just pointing out like the lack of access to waterways and to rivers for disabled people, and, the lack of gear and the lack of, access in general, would be awesome. So.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. And I think that in places like outlets like this too, I could probably do a lot better job, and I know I can, right? I mean, getting more diverse and more content. And that's where it was cool when you reached out or however we connected first, that it was like, oh yeah, this is a great topic. So I think that we could all do a better job, right? That's the struggle is that, and some of this too, the challenges, and this is on the conservation stuff as well, is that when you do a conservation episode or whatever you do, a lot of times it gets a lot less views, right? Listens, because, and I don't know exactly why that is. I think because maybe people see negative, they think maybe it's a negative thing and they want to hear more about other stuff, but you still have to do it, right? You still have to put it out there because that's kind of like our, I don't know, you know what I mean? We all have to do that because that's the only way we're going to move this stuff forward.
Right.
And so I don't know, what would be your take on that? Do you feel like for somebody who maybe hasn't done much here and say, maybe they're thinking like, well, this is going to hurt my numbers. What do you say about that?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, as you already said, like, it's about taking baby steps, right? Like, we can all improve, and it is a learning process, like, even someone who is aware of the issues, I still mess up sometimes, like, it's a learning process, and it takes time to learn as well. But yeah, I mean, so there's two sides to that, right? Like with I don't want my numbers to fall or what have you. First of all, like as a listener, as a consumer of media, I know that a lot of people, listen to podcasts about fly fishing or, about the outdoors, about any other thing, to quote unquote escape the political correctness or escape, politics in general or what have you. That's the thing, is like, you can't escape it because it is so intricately intertwined with everything in our lives. Like, racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, any kind of ism or whatever is very intricately related to every detail of our lives. So, like, yes, there are barriers that have kept women and people of color and people with disabilities and, people who are queer out of the outdoors. They're not physical barriers most of the time. Sometimes they are, but a lot of times it is, the way that people look at you when you're out in the outdoors. There's a lot of exclusion. Yeah. And like I said, we cannot take those two things apart and only have one. So yeah, as a listener, get over it. Yeah. Like, exactly. I hate to be so blunt, but I mean, if you think that it doesn't affect your life because, I don't face oppression, like I don't really care about it. Yep. Start caring about it because these are other human beings. Exactly. And then as a producer of this media, I understand that like having your numbers fall is not a good feeling. But in the long run, you will end up kind of appealing to a larger audience.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
your numbers may fall for an episode or two, but in the long run, they will pick up because you will be appealing to a larger audience.
Yeah.
And you can also feel good about the work that you're doing too. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that is the other great point there that people probably don't realize is that, and it's about finding your people, right? It's like those
Right.
people that are tuning you off because you're talking about, whatever, right? Diversity, inclusion, women's rights, whatever. I mean, those
Yep.
probably aren't the people you want, as your people anyways, right? And so
Exactly.
talk about your thing and you attract the people you want and a better, more diverse. It's just like, a more diverse population of humans, a more diverse population of animals in the wildlife. It's always better, right?
Yes.
It's always going to be better. So that's
Yeah.
really cool to hear you say that. And I think that's the take home because, you always hear like the guides out there, right? You're on a boat. Don't talk about religion. Don't talk about politics right on the boat. There's something else you
Right.
don't talk about. But I mean, I guess you can kind of talk a little bit about that without ruining the trip, right? Is that possible?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you just have to find a way to appeal to the audience, right? Like, I mean, whether you're on a guided trip or you have a podcast like yours, you just have to find a way to appeal to them, right? And like that's what I kind of was talking about with making these videos and appealing to people in their comfort zone, right? Like it's all about, like, I don't think that activism by screaming at people because they're wrong is very effective. Calling people out is what they refer to it as. I think
Right.
calling people in is a lot more effective. And saying delicately, like, hey, this is not okay, or, hey, this is the issue, or, whatever. And then, if they push back to a certain extent, then maybe, okay,
Yeah.
it's time to call out. But,
Yeah.
At first, like, people only want to learn when you give them the opportunity to. So, with these, like, with these videos, we're not in people's face saying, hey,
Right.
white supremacy has caused this issue and, like, it's your fault, blah, blah, blah. No, like, we're highlighting the people that are changing it, right? So, yeah, it's an opportunity to educate.
Jackson Hole Fly Company may sound like a new brand, but they've actually been designing and manufacturing fly fishing equipment and flies since 1978. In 2020, they launched the new jhflyco.com and started selling gear directly to anglers all over the country. You can check them out right now. They have a huge selection of rods, reels, lines, tools, fly patterns, and all sorts of good stuff. They've got a special discount offer you can check out right now. This is a killer discount, 25% off on your first order. This is pretty hard to beat. That is a nice chunk of money. They've got a bunch of flies right now. We've also got a little top fly challenge going, and we're going to be giving a shout out to Jackson there in that challenge, and we're going to be shipping out some of their flies to the winners of that challenge. You can check them out right now. That's jhflyco.com/swing to get 25% off your first order and also free shipping on all orders over $50. jhflyco.com/swing to get started. Check it out. You support this podcast by checking out Jackson right now. Let's circle back around on some of the talk. So I think we talked about three. We had the conservation, the gear, the safety. What are there a couple other things we haven't touched on here?
Yeah. So our fourth one is actually, perfect segue, is called Scope of Inclusion. And it's about 20 minutes long. And we spoke with Erica Nelson, who does the Awkward Angler podcast. And she's also a guide at Willowfly Anglers and a Brown Folks Fishing ambassador. And then we also spoke with Crystal Egley again for this video, and Janine Blair, who is Fishinista's co-founder. And so this one, obviously, we're talking to three women of color, Black women and Indigenous women. And we spoke to them not only about, inclusion of, the BIPOC community, but also LGBTQ plus, disabled, anglers with disabilities, and every other marginalized person out there. So we talked to them about the lack of inclusion for these marginalized groups, not just in fly fishing, but in outdoorsmanship in general, in conservation organizations, et cetera. And how it can be really uncomfortable to navigate a predominantly white and male sport. So, even with the diversification that we're seeing in fly fishing, a lot of it is still white women.
Right.
So it is still a very white sport.
Yeah.
So it can be pretty uncomfortable for people that don't fit in that box, or, in the cisgender heterosexual box, to navigate the sport. And then we also talk about how organizations and companies can start to include these marginalized groups and how to get them involved in all aspects of the industry. And how, predominantly white conservation groups can also, bring some diversity in, and how instead of creating their own initiatives and own programs, how they can work with established groups that are, led and run by people that, are affected. So there's groups that, look at disability and outdoors, and, BIPOC and, queer, et cetera. It's important to, what I learned is it's important to, work with those groups that are already up and running instead of creating your own initiatives. And one of the things that Crystal Egley said is that, like, someone else is not going to be oppressed in the same way that you are, like with intersectionality and, multiple identities and all of that. Like, someone who is white and disabled is not going to be, oppressed in the same way as an indigenous woman or what have you. So, kind of saying like, oh, we need more diversity on the water in general is not, it's a time saver, because all you have to do is say, yeah, we just want more diversity. But in order to actually make meaningful change, you do have to have, specific, okay, we're going to get Black women on the water. We're going to get indigenous women on the water. We're going to get Black men on the water, what have you. So yeah, that's that one.
Yeah. On that one, Madison, before you move on to the next one, I want to touch base. So I'm just curious on, as far as the comparing fly fishing, maybe you don't have this data, but when you look at fly fishing, diversity versus, say, other outdoor sports, I mean, is it similar? I mean, is fly fishing kind of behind, ahead? And I kind of think of this because I've heard some things just on the conservation piece where we talk a lot about conservation and stuff, but some people, I think, feel like maybe other outdoor sports are a little bit further ahead, right, than the conservation piece. Can you shed any light on that?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I can't shed too much light on that, but I do know that as of a few years ago, I think there were I want to say 9% people who identified as Black in fly fishing, and then 5% of those who identify as Latino or Hispanic. So it's pretty small, but I don't know how that compares to other outdoor sports, though. So
yeah. We'll leave that for somebody. We'll circle back on that at a later point. But that's just there's all sorts of data points right out there that you can dig into to figure out if you're doing, how you're doing, right? That's the whole thing. Is how are we doing? Are we improving? I mean, how are we? So that's another big topic, right? We could dig into at a later point.
Absolutely. Yes.
Nice. Okay. So what was the final? So give us the other kind of movie that you guys did here.
Yeah. So the fifth video is Untitled right now, and it's about 8 minutes long. And it's kind of the other side of the industry. So, we spoke to 3 women who, have started their own companies to resolve these issues. but we wanted to speak to, women who are just kind of, regular old anglers that have had trouble finding gear. So for that one, we spoke to Penny Maybe, and Lisa Lay, who is a Mayfly project mentor and the Colorado Trout Unlimited director at large. And then Circe Sue, who is the Georgia Women Fly Fishers program director. So yeah, we wanted to kind of, hammer down on the fact that like, this isn't a problem just for, full figured women or tall women or whatever. It is an issue across the spectrum. So Lisa Lay and Circe Sue are both kind of more petite women. And then, Penny Maybe is a little bit more full figured. And, we wanted to just hear their experiences, and, show their personal experiences trying to find gear and how that made them feel. Because it's not just, ill-fitting gear is not just, a safety hazard.
Right.
It also takes a huge emotional toll. And, because it kind of tells you like, if I can't find gear, maybe I don't belong in this realm, So, and it also, it also kind of makes you feel like about your body.
Yeah.
And, it makes you feel not confident, and confidence is key on the water.
Right.
So yeah, that's that last one.
That's it. No, and again, that just kind of hits home because I think everybody, maybe most people, even me, I'm pretty average build, I guess, but, I found like a medium long, right, is the wader that's fit. If I get a medium long, it's probably going to fit pretty well, but I've had waders that haven't fit, perfectly and stuff. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, I can fit into anything. So, no, the gear thing is huge. And I love that there's so many new brands coming out there, and I'm sure lots more that will be coming, right, as we move forward here.
Absolutely.
And we've had a few of those episodes. I'll probably touch base with you to see, some other people we can get on to keep moving this forward. But yeah, anything else we want to get into? I guess I was going to ask, as like I mentioned, I'm a dad, I got a couple of girls. What would be a tip you'd give me to help to not, screw things up or to be better at this as I'm thinking of my girls, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, in society, right, because God, we're going through this stuff right now with, right, it's kind of scary, some of this stuff out there. What would you tell me about how to keep doing a good job at connecting them to all this?
Yeah, for sure. To fly fishing or to the larger stuff? Okay.
Yeah, more to the broader stuff, like the stuff we're talking here, like everything that you have in the movie, all, obviously it revolves around fly fishing, but it's bigger. It's way bigger than that, right?
Yeah.
It's about society. I mean, what would you tell me? Maybe that's a big question, but maybe some little tip you'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Just having open, honest conversations with your kids, right? Like, if you don't know the answer to a question they ask, tell them. Don't try and, come up with an answer just because you want to.
Right.
Tell them like, hey, I don't know the answer to that. Let's find out together. Yeah.
Awesome.
And also, using some of the resource. I mean, there are great, book lists and movie lists that people have put together, having them read some of those books, and exposing them to, events and projects like Casting Forward, right? Where it can be a fun thing that's also educational. And, taking them to, weird events that you wouldn't think that would be interesting. Like, I say weird, but not necessarily like, there's like drag queen reading times at libraries.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, like taking them to, unique events and activities that are going to kind of help them grow up with, different people surrounding them. Because one of the things that isolates us the most in our ideas of who other people are is not being exposed to people of different, races, genders, sexualities, abilities, whatever it might be. how are you going to learn anything different if you're not exposed to it?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
those are some little tips.
Yeah, that's good. No, those are awesome. I think I'll
Yeah.
definitely, and I think, just getting them to your event will be awesome because I think that's a
Cool.
perfect fit, and we'll be, sharing the word. And well,
Awesome.
before we get out of here, anything else we missed today? I know, we touched on a lot of it, but anything else you want to give a shout out before we head out of here?
Not really. I just want to give another shout out to my team. Allie Mae, Polina Saran, Esteban Fernandez. You have all been awesome, and I couldn't have done this project without them. And that's about it. We covered a lot, so
that's awesome. How did you, just quickly before we get out of here, on your team? And was that just a team built by friends of yours, or how do you find, because that is a struggle, right? Building a team. Sometimes people might be just themselves sitting here like, how do I even find money to pay for a team, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a struggle. But it sounds like you've got some good people. How'd that all come to be?
Yeah. So, on the payment aspect, like I have fully self-funded Ms. Mayhem from day one and this project. So, this opportunity or this event is kind of an opportunity for us to make some of that money back. And then I want to give bonuses to my team. But yeah, so all three of them have been involved with Ms. Mayhem since the start of it. And, just kind of glommed onto this project when we started it. I met all three of them through working at the student newspaper at MSU Denver, the university that I went to. So, obviously a little bit different because we are all journalists. But yeah, I suggest especially if you're younger, going to, your student media center to, even hang out or, much less join the newspaper or the magazine or the radio show or whatever is available.
That's great.
Yeah, it is a great opportunity to meet people that you will be working with for the rest of your life, pretty much.
That's it. Yeah, and I'm not sure. I heard a similar thing. And again, this is I'm not sure if you connected with the folks at Jared and the Flylords stuff, but I was connecting to some of his. He's kind of been blowing up, with what he's been doing. But I connected with one of his guys at the show, and we're chatting with him, and he told me about this. I guess it was kind of a university, maybe not a normal kind of what we think of as larger, but it was this program where it all focused on conservation, just this really cool background. And anyways, coming out of it, you don't know that, but I think Jared has that background, and then he's hiring people from that school, right? And
awesome.
So that's the cool thing is right, if you want to, you got to find those places where they're the hot spots of, like you say, journalism, if that's what you want to do, or I guess podcasting, right? For this example, that's a little bit different because I don't even know if there's a podcasting school out there. It's
I'm sure there is now. It's become such a popular, form of media that I'm sure there's got to be, at least majors. Yeah,
there are. Yeah, there's some education. There's definitely people that are teaching in coursework and stuff out there. So it's good.
Yeah.
But no, this has been fun. I definitely will put a link here, and so people can head out to and remind us again the best website where we can find all this.
Yeah. So if you just go to our website in general, msmayhem.com, there's a banner at the bottom of the page that will lead you to the Casting Forward landing page. Or you can also go directly. It's msmayhem.com/casting-forward. And you can find all the information and tickets and all that good stuff.
Right on. Well, I'm excited to watch it myself, and I'll get we'll have a big event. We'll have the popcorn and have a full family event for this one. So
sweet.
Yeah,
awesome.
Madison, thanks for all your time today and doing this important work and shedding some light for everybody here. So I hope that, I think this is going to at least connect with a few people that are going to be interested. And until I'll check back with you when we get the video, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. And, I look forward to any more things in the future.
So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes, all the links, and everything else we covered, wetflyswing.com/320, 320 will get you the goods. If you're brand new to the show, or if you haven't clicked that subscribe button, this is a good way to make sure you get the next episode, and that'll be delivered right into your pocket, right into your phone, or right into your inbox. And that next episode is going to be a good one. We're heading across the pond over to Iceland. We're going to be talking Iceland. So if you want to get updated and hear about one of the serious destinations, one of the bucket lists, definitely another one that's on my list. We have a good conversation about Iceland, what it's about, and some cool trips and resources to just understand. If you've ever thought about it, this is the one to check out. All right, I think that is going to be a wrap. If I don't have anything else right now, other than to say, if you can, check it out with me, Wetfly Swing, all over social. Send me email. I'd love to hear from you, Dave at wetflyswing.com. If you have a show topic, it's always a good way to send me an email and just let me know. Would love to hear if you had a chance to check out this episode. If this resonated with you, this is definitely, obviously, an important topic. And I always love a chance to highlight topics that we don't always get a chance to. So we took a little break from the tips and tricks. I hope you enjoyed this and appreciated what we dug into here today. And I hope that you get a chance to connect with Madison as well. Love it if you could just say hi, maybe let her know you heard about this on the podcast, and check out the films. I'm going to be watching it as well with my family, and going to be excited to check it out. So thanks for supporting them and the podcast, and I will talk to you soon. See you on the river. See you on the water.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.